Hello everyone. Today we are going to analyze an American horror comedy film, Goosebumps. The film, released in 2015, was directed by Rob Letterman. The story is by Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. After her husband's death, Gail comes to Detroit with her teenage son Zach Cooper, wanting a change from that environment. But Zach, who was born and brought up in a luxurious city like New York, has no interest in coming to a small town like Detroit, but he agrees with his mother's decision. His mother, Gail, is a college professor. At the end of their journey, they reached a small yet beautiful house. As they entered, Zach suddenly felt someone watching him from the window of the nearby house. By the time he looked back, it moved away. Zach goes inside the house. Suddenly his Aunt Lorraine walks in. She presents a hat to Zach. Later, when Zach went outside, he meets a beautiful girl, Hannah, who lives next door. While both of them were talking, suddenly Hannah's father came in. Seeing him, Hannah immediately leaves there. Zach tries to introduce himself, saying that they are new residents. But Hannah's father was a very stubborn person. He warns Zach not to come near the wall or talk to Hannah anymore. Zach comes inside and tells his mother and aunt about the incident. His aunt tells him that it was Mr. Shivers, and that he is a very mysterious person. She also adds that she likes the smell of his perfume. After hearing this, Gail and Zach look at each other in surprise. Suddenly Gail got a picture of Zach and his father. She looks at it. Seeing that Zach missed his father, he loved him so much. To hide his grief from them, he tells his mother and goes to clean his room. Lorraine asks Gail about Zach. His father was his world. Zach also got admission to the same college where Gail works in Detroit. At the same time, Zach was sitting in his room watching a video with his father. He missed his father so much. The next day, Zach goes to college. Since Gail was the vice principal of the college, they decided to go separately. Zach gets a friend in college. His name was Champ. Zach's scenes with Champ are all very funny. As it was the first day of the college, the principal had called everyone for a meeting in which he introduced the vice principal. Only then Zach revealed to Champ that she's his mother. In the evening, Zach went to the back of the house to dump the waste. He felt like someone is observing him. He looks around. Suddenly Hannah came to him. She had made a hole in the fence so that she could get out without her father's knowledge. Zach asks her doubt about why her father was behaving like this, but she couldn't give a proper answer. But Hannah adds that her father doesn't like anyone, and that he has a special character. Zach tells Hannah about his isolation when she asks him if he likes the new city. He also asks her if there is any place to explore. Hannah then takes him to a very secret location. As it was dark and an unfamiliar place, Zach felt a little nervous, but he continued along the path Hannah had pointed out, and they ended up in a forest. Zach looks around in bewilderment, unable to understand anything in a huge forest surrounded by darkness. Suddenly Hannah turned on the light. Then only Zach sees the miracle hidden in that forest. It was a very beautiful place, like a park. It was built by someone earlier, and then got destroyed without proper maintenance. The park, decorated with lights, looked very beautiful in the dark. Zach and Hannah talked to each other about their lives. Hannah's life was pretty much the same. She didn't have a mother. After talking for a while, they walked back home. Zach thanked her for giving him such a beautiful night. But amid their conversation, Hannah's stubborn father unexpectedly walks in. Frightened, Hannah rushes to the house. Zach stands stunned, not knowing what to do. Hannah's father warns Zach to not meet or speak to her. Zach reached his house. While studying at night, he hears Hannah screaming. He heard Hannah and her father fighting. Zach looks out through the window. He could only see two shadows. Immediately the lights went off with Hannah's scream. Realizing that Hannah is in danger, Zach goes to her house without even thinking about his safety. But the secret passage Hannah had made in the fence was closed by her father. With no other option, Zach jumps over the fence and reaches her house. He keeps knocking on the door, calling Hannah. After a while, Hannah's father came and opened the door. Zach tells him that he heard Hannah's screams, but he sent him back, telling him to mind his own business. He called out her again, but there was no response. Disappointed, Zach immediately calls the police. Meanwhile, he also tells his mother everything. Later, the police arrived. Zach goes to Hannah's house along with the police. He asks Hannah's father about the scream, but Hannah's father tries to avoid them, saying that he lives there alone, and that Hannah took an early morning flight to her mother in London. The policemen who were about to go back hear a girl's screams and enter again. But again, Hannah's father tries to avoid them by saying that it was the voice heard from the TV. Suddenly hearing a sound from the room, Zach calls Hannah and tries to go inside. Suddenly Hannah's father grabs him. Later, the cops leave by giving a warning to Zach to not give false news. When Zach came home, he felt very disappointed. His mind was telling him that something had happened to Hannah. That night, Gail had an urgent need to go to college, but she could not leave Zach alone in this condition anymore. So Aunt Lorraine comes there, even though he was talking to Aunt Zach was thinking about Hannah. Suddenly he sees a shadow behind her window. There was a fight between the two. He decided to find Hannah in any possible way. He lies to Aunt Lorraine and tries to find ways to save Hannah. He calls his best friend Champ for help. While they were thinking about how to get inside the house, they saw her father coming out of the house and getting into the car. He went somewhere. At this point, Zach and Champ entered Hannah's house. Zach sneaks in through a narrow room, leaving Champ as a guard outside. The room was full of mousetraps, and many chains were hung there. With this, the mystery of Hannah's father became stronger. Champ, who was standing outside, got scared and came inside with Zach. Although it's a fearful situation, Champ's comedy scenes are on a different level. The two of them entered Hannah's house, being very careful not to fall into the mousetraps. They were Hannah's father's plan to not bring others into the house. Hearing a sound, they went upstairs. It was a big room. Many books were stacked on a shelf, but those books had something special. They were all locked. It was the books of the great writer R.L. Stine. All are fantasy stories. The same fantasy characters that we have seen, like the snowman and the mother. Champ wonders why he has kept all this. He tells Zach that although Stine was a great storyteller, one day he went missing. Later, Champ attempts to open the book. There was a large key kept in a mirrored cage. Zach unlocks the book with that key. Zach and Champ were crouched down on the floor when they suddenly saw someone coming from behind to hit them. It was Hannah. Hannah is shocked to see Zach and Champ at her house. She asks them why are they at her house. Zach explained the entire incident, but the truth is that Hannah did not know any of this. So who would be the one who screamed? Anyway, Hannah tells them to leave the house immediately. But Champ was not ready to go. He starts a conversation with her. At this time, Zach informs her that they unlocked the book. Hearing that, Hannah got scared. Apologizing to her, Zach tries to open the book. While Hannah was about to tell him not to open it, Zach had already opened the book. Suddenly the book flew away from his hand. Hannah, who came to take the book, also fell. Suddenly a silver light began to emerge from the book with a terrible storm. Zach and Champ got panicked, not knowing what was going on. Hannah was standing like a stone, unable to say anything. She was well aware of the danger that was going to occur. Suddenly all the letters in the book combined to form the fantasy character Snowman. Hannah warns him not to move, but unfortunately Champ unknowingly dropped a glass lightly. Suddenly the snowman turns around and rushes toward him. He screams about seeing the creature. Meanwhile, they didn't notice that the bundle of books on the shelf had fallen. Little did they know that those books had the most dangerous creatures. Zach bravely rescues Champ from the snowman. Hannah follows the creature, knowing that it would cause danger. She also informs Zach that locking him inside the book is the only way to prevent the danger. After many struggles to lock him, finally, Hannah's father comes there. He somehow locks him inside the book. With this, the mystery surrounding Hannah's father is cleared. Zach and Hannah realize that he was trying to save them. He also reveals that he is R.L. Stine, the writer who wrote all that. Zach already had the stout. They reached home. As soon as they reached home, Stine tries to leave the country with Hannah, but Hannah doesn't agree. Zach and Champ made it clear that they would not go back without knowing the truth of what they were seeing. Eventually, Stine was forced to tell them all his story. He told about his childhood, which he doesn't like to remember. He had no friends because of his strange allergic disease. He always spent time inside his room, since everyone used to make fun of him. So he gradually began to write stories. He wrote stories about ghosts, demons, and supernatural creatures. At first, these creatures were written to scare his friends, but later they turned into real ones. Stine was going through a terrible situation. As long as the book is locked, everyone is safe. But the disaster that will happen if it is open cannot be predicted. Soon Stine took Hannah to leave the country. But when they reached the hall, Stine noticed another book lying open. There was a puppet boy named Slappy. Zach and Champ were surprised to see him talking. Stine is trying to get Slappy back into the book, but Slappy was more terrifying than any other character. It had a special ability to change places and appear in new places. Slappy then asks Stine if he was released to destroy the city this time. Knowing that Stine was trying to lock him inside the book, Slappy burns the book and also releases all the other creatures. With that, things became more dangerous. Stine sets out to lock them inside the book. The creatures that came out of it surrounded them in the kitchen. The fridge and the cupboard were full of these creatures, but Slappy had burned all the books. They go out in search of Slappy, but the sight outside was terrible. They saw Stine's characters destroying the whole city. Later, Slappy went to the police station and froze the cops. Meanwhile, in Zach's house, Lorraine was unaware of all these happenings. On hearing a doorbell, she comes out. She saw a cute puppy standing outside. Not knowing whose it is, she takes it to the house. house. At this time the puppy changed into a ferocious wolf. It comes closer to attack Laura. Meanwhile the situation in the town was worse. Stein's characters take out their revenge by destroying the buildings and cars and freezing them like statues. Hannah comes to her father and asks what to do next, but Stein was completely helpless. Stein tells them that he can't do anything without those books. After some time Zach came up with an idea. He said that, since Stein created all these evil characters, he must create another good character to destroy them. Both Hannah and Champ agreed to his idea, but Stein says that just one single character can't eliminate so many characters. But as a try he agrees to write. Later Zach is trying to find out a computer for Stein to write the story, but then Stein reveals that he can only type on his typewriter. He also adds that the characters will not come to life if it's typed elsewhere. Zach assures him that he would bring it. All four of them sets out to take that typewriter. That's when they see some footsteps coming up in front of their car. It was the Invisible Man from Stein's Invisible Man story. The Invisible Man walks in and attacks Champ. As they somehow escape from the Invisible Man and start to pull the car forward, they see an even bigger monster ahead named Mantis. It was a huge mosquito the size of a dinosaur. It approaches to kill them, but somehow they escaped. Later the car Stein was driving overturned in front of a supermarket. All four hide in the supermarket. Later Hannah tells about that park that she and Zach used to go to. On hearing this Stein gets angry. Then they see another character of Stein, a wolf. After many struggles to hide it finally came to attack them. Luckily Aunt Lorraine arrives with the car just in time. As she couldn't brake the car properly it stopped after hitting the wolf. After that the four of them go to take the typewriter, and Lorraine went to inform the police. They then walk through a cemetery. Meanwhile Zach and Hannah have developed a connection between them. When they were about to kiss Zach notices a silver light emerging from Hannah. Later several mummies tried to attack them in the cemetery, but they somehow escaped and reached the place where Stein kept the typewriter. While Hannah and Champ were walking ahead Stein calls Zach and reveals that Hannah is not real, but only a character created by him. Zach got completely broken when he heard this. Stein also told that he loves her so much, and that he cannot live without his daughter. Zach understood his situation. By then Hannah had reached there looking for them. Finally they reach the place where the typewriter is kept. They had now reached the college where Gail works. Later Zach and Champ warn everyone about the great danger of arriving, but no one believes them. But later Mantis attacks the place. Everyone at the party was told to sit quietly. Zach instructed everyone to close all doors. Meanwhile Slappy opened all the books and burned them. The monstrous creatures that came out of it gathered around Slappy. Slappy instructs them to destroy everyone. At this time Stein was writing the story. Mummies, Invisible Man, Snowman, wolves, beetles and all other characters came in to destroy the college. Finally Slappy finds Stein and cuts his fingers. Suddenly Zach, Champ, and Hannah come and saves him. He had only 2 pages to complete the story. Taking the story and Stein they rushed out. Meanwhile Champ notices the silver light coming from Hannah and realized that she was not real. The creatures were trying to open the door to attack the college kids. Suddenly an idea flashed in the minds of Zach and Stein. Stein gets into the school bus and leaves. Seeing this Slappy calls back all the creatures and asks them to catch Stein. With this the creatures left the college kids and went after Stein. The creatures surrounded the school bus, but that's when they realized that it wasn't Stein, but a temporary driving setup made of machines. At that time the 4 of them went to the park that Hannah had mentioned. There Stein tries to finish his story. However Slappy determined he would not allow Stein to finish the story. Later Slappy finds Stein. He set the whole park on fire. They run out of it and get on the giant wheel. Stein called Zach and instructed him to complete the story. Hannah tearfully witnessed as the volcano engulfed Stein, but Zach had faith that he could save Stein, so he tries to finish the story. Slappy approaches Stein who is writhing on the volcano. He suddenly notices that Stein doesn't have the book in his hand, and when he looks over he sees Zach, Hannah, and Champ trying to finish the book sitting inside the giant wheel. Immediately Slappy released all the monsters to them. Zach tries to complete the story fast. Even though the story was completed, by then the creatures had taken hold of their wheel. The wheel turned into a corner. They escape with minor injuries. Hannah asks Zach to open the book as soon as possible, but despite what she said Zach was not ready to open it. But he couldn't explain the reason to Hannah. But Hannah asks him if he fears losing her. Only then he realizes that Hannah knew that she wasn't real. She was living this life knowing everything and experiencing her father's love. Hannah took the book from his hand and opened it. All of the characters that Stein created went back into that book. Zach tried hard to hold Hannah back, but she tearfully bid him farewell. Zach was unable to control his grief. He bursts into tears. The scene after many days is shown. Zach and Gail go to college. Zach has now begun to interact with others. Stein falls in love with Lorraine. Stein himself walks into the class as Zach's English teacher. After class, Stein and Zach go outside. That's when he gives him the big surprise he had in store for Zach. He rewrote a story and brought Hannah back. He ran and hugged her. Stein happily witnessed the love between them. Then he walks away. It was then that he noticed that his typewriter was typing something by itself. Every character was locked inside the book again, except the Invisible Man. From there the story starts again. Hope everyone liked this fantasy movie. We will be back with yet another one. Till then, goodbye.